IVM.
Hey everybody, welcome to another week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you are not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money. As we head into week 4 of lockdown, we're doing our best to make sure that we maintain our schedules and try and get you as many of the podcasts that you're used to listening as we possibly can, but beg your indulgence if there are any slippages in schedules and times. With that, let's just get on with your show.
The last month odd has been one of the most disruptive times for the way we work, communicate, and live, not just as individuals and people, but as businesses and entire industries. What this has led to is a series of trends and changes that might shape and mold the fabric of the way we do things, in the medium and in the long term. So I thought it'll be interesting to do an episode discussing some of these trends and changes and kind of look around a little bit and kind of take stock. And to do this, I have Karthik Srinivasan with me today. He's a very well-known communications professional who's in the past held various senior positions across Ogilvy, Edelman, etc. He's also written a fantastic book called Be Social, which you should all read. And he's been putting out his POV on the entire communications landscape and actually the overall industry in general for some time now. And it's almost my daily update of what's really happening. And that's what's ahead on this episode of Advertising is Dead. I'm Varun Tugirala, co-founder and co-chief of The Glitch, and we'll be right back with Advertising is Dead.
Are you looking for India's most awesome cricket podcast? Are you now tired of listening to the same old guys drone on about cricket everywhere? Edges and Sledges is a weekly cricket podcast hosted by 3 fans of the game, Varun, DJ, and myself, Ashwin. It was established in early 2018, has over 60 episodes now, and is of course now proud to be on the IVM Podcast Network. Each week, we get together from 3 different time zones, the USA, the UK, and Singapore, and we talk about things from the world of cricket, with a focus on Indian cricket. We often interview special guests from all around the world, including former cricketers and cricket media personalities. So check out Edges and Sledges, the cricket podcast, now on the IVM Network.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're with Karthik. Karthik, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
And as I've been saying for the last almost month now, in normal circumstances, would have loved to do this in person. But I think especially what we're going to talk about today, the virtual way is how we will end up doing these for a while now. How has lockdown been for you over the last month or so?
For people who are as privileged as you and me, it has been very decent and very sane. I mean, we get to choose what we can do in our home. So we're just enjoying that small privileges that we have so far in life.
I think what's also been interesting has been, because I've been following what you put out on LinkedIn for a while now. And what I've always found interesting was that you take a very, it's almost like you give a roundup of not just, what are the ads? You generally get these things from publications or anybody who's posting about this stuff. So, these are the new ads that have come out, or this is what this brand put out, etc. Right. You kind of tend to dig a little deeper and say, okay, fine, these are the kind of campaigns coming out. This is the inference we can get from that. This is where they got it right, where they maybe got it wrong. How did you start off doing that part? I mean, was that something that just naturally became something you're putting out, or was that? What was the thought?
I would say it's actually deliberate because the thing is that I am not from the traditional advertising industry. I mean, I've been in Ogilvy for the past 5 years. Till 2018 I was there, but I wasn't in the conventional advertising space at all. I'm actually more of a PR person. Mm-hmm. The first decade of my career was in PR. The next decade was in social media, which was PR-led social media, and then to advertising because, Ogilvy is an ad agency. So I don't look at it from an advertising point of view. I actually look at it at least 3 or 4 lens above, which is the overall communication space point of view.
Okay.
So I might not have the most evolved opinion on advertising per se, but I tend to look at everything from a communications point of view, which is the PR person's point of view generally. So that is actually a very deliberate attempt, basically, because I've actually written a book on personal branding. And one of the first steps in personal branding is try to define how you want people to remember you or know you for. And the things that you want people to know you for. And within that spectrum, I had actually defined that the fact that I want to be known for my communication skills. And if I've actually done something in the past 2 decades on the same topic, can I actually continue to be a voice that people can, like occasionally infer to, or like to actually see the kind of points of view that comes from me. So then I actually thought that I need to think like a media person and have a daily schedule of like my own posts and insights and inferences. And then inside the communication spectrum, advertising and creativity happens to be one leg of that. So occasionally I write about communication, but it's more about social media and then like brands, branding, and positioning. So those things actually form the whole set of topics that I generally focus on. And I try to read as much as possible, try to actually dig deeper into the points of view of why and where and what and how and etc. And not go into the broad level kind of things, which is quite easy to write about generally. Like trying to say that these are the new ads, please watch them. I try to put forward my point of view also very easily.
And if you look at the last couple of years, especially maybe just like the last year or so, what have you seen as predominant trends? I mean, obviously getting just before, if you look at the time just before COVID and maybe a year before that, what were you seeing as kind of directions that the entire industry was going towards from everything that you've been looking at?
I don't necessarily see any particular direction before the COVID hit. It was just the status quo. I mean, it was just business as usual. There was obviously one trend which I'm sure, like the whole world knows, that there are more startups that are doing, like advertising, and they are flush with funds and their ads are all over the place. Whether there is a business model or not, there is advertising anyway. So that was probably the most prominent trend, because earlier it used to be that, when you advertise, you actually look at very specific returns from that advertising in terms of sales or like brand value or whatever it is. But these days, not these days, pre-COVID, it's more like throwing money at advertising just to be known in front of people. Just to be credible in front of people, saying that, okay, if this brand can advertise on the front page, it might be a good brand. That kind of advertising was quite often the norm, basically, because people had the money. But obviously, we have hit the brakes dramatically in the past 1 month now.
Exactly.
There is absolutely no advertising in print. In fact, I had actually put a very, like a funny tweet, which was also quite thought-provoking at the same time. Sometime in Diwali 2019 time, I actually weighed the Times of India, which had so many ads, and it was about 500 grams plus, if I remember right. I actually weighed it about 2 weeks ago. It was about 50 grams. So that actually says a lot in terms of how much advertising is there.
How much the actual weight of advertising has changed.
Yeah, the actual weight of news and advertising. So it was actually quite shocking to see there is so much advertising that we consume, and the newspapers without ads is actually quite sad to look at. Obviously there is more news to consume, but it's also sad to look at the same time.
What you said about startups is interesting, right? Because it's because if you look at all primary sponsorships, look at the largest spends, look at most hoardings around, wherever we were when we could commute. It was pretty much every single startup out there doing that, and obviously there was a lot of funding happening. This whole thing called the startup boom for me has been almost a continuing boom, even though people say it's going up and going down. But now, honestly, I think for a lot of them, it is about survival rather than anything else. Not just the larger companies who've been around for a long time, especially for startups. I think it's the most crucial period for them to figure out how they will adapt and go forward.
True, but interestingly, we are also seeing a lot of startups actually raising money even in this situation. In fact, there is news about News Fund raising money yesterday. No broker actually raised money day before yesterday. It was in the news. And quite a few startups are actually raising money even now. I have no idea how. Probably they have a good business model which is quite sound, and they're able to convince the right investors. So it's actually good for them that they're able to do so. But I really think there is a tremendous opportunity for startups to actually build their products looking at the new normal right now. For instance, if you look at a Zomato or a Dine Out, their whole business seems to be at risk right now But if you think like a product manager or a product engineer, you need to actually recalibrate the way a hotel sells seats right now. Because for instance, if a restaurant had about about 50 seats earlier, now it would only be about 20 to 22 seats because of the social distancing norms and the fear of people to come out to eat at a restaurant will stay anyway, like even after the lockdown is lifted. So everything needs to be recalibrated. The same would go for a red bus or a clear trip or a make my trip that need to recalibrate everything, think differently right now. So there is an opportunity to change the way they are doing their business right now, and this is probably the time to get the right product engineers to think differently for the new normal. But whether they can be able to do it with the funding they have and the people that they have who are all working from home, I'm not sure whether they can do it. But I still think there is a good opportunity for most startups to adapt and thrive.
That's an interesting point because, what has also been interesting, see how some of them, like you said, have adapted, right? I think the fact that I get a notification from Swiggy now saying if you want anything delivered, we can do that for you as well. Or the fact that, it's all, when you say adapt, but do you see some of these things as being short term and not necessarily long term? Like would suddenly a Swiggy or a Zomato turn around and say, okay, till now you were just food delivery, but maybe considering the fact that tomorrow something like this might happen again, does it, mean that an entire look at a long term business model change and not necessarily a short term adaptation?
Yeah, I would tend to think it as medium term because I keep reading a lot of information around how long will this pandemic related fear and trust issues of being outside stay. And the most conservative, most optimistic estimates state that it is going to stay at least till 2022. It's quite scary to even think of, but that's the most conservative one. Unless there is a vaccine which is much earlier, which has its own cycle of trying to test in various places and try to, ascertain the efficacy of it, all will take time on a large population like India or China. So obviously it's going to take time. So we are going to be fearful of being in crowded places for at least 1 or 2 years is what I am assuming going to be the case. So at least from that point of view, it won't be long term, but definitely medium term. I would fully expect a Zomato or a Swiggy to continue to deliver groceries also, because if they can be useful and productive and then keep their people, engaged in doing the deliveries, because we might be slightly more fearful of ordering food from outside. I think it's going to stay. All these are going to stay like the new normal, at least in the medium term, till we are able to find a vaccine, a medicine, and then we go back to our old self.
Yeah, this going back to old self is an interesting point, right? Is because there are multiple schools of thought. People say that human beings generally have, at some point they go back to default setting of just being what humans are. But considering the width of how this has affected things, right? If you look at something like travel, and I was reading something interesting the other day which said that this might actually be the death of the middle seat in airlines for a while, which although sounds great, also means that flying will become a lot more expensive, which means anyone want to do a holiday, will get affected by that. Or maybe people ideally say, okay, I don't want to go for a holiday anyway, anytime soon. And you'll have, like, if you go a little wider, like places which depend primarily on tourism, will get affected. So I'm sure there are industries who will definitely have to rethink what they can do, like the travel industry, for instance. Or there was also an interview of the Airbnb CEO who was just going to go for an IPO in the States right when this happened, and he went ahead and quickly raised some funds just to kind of keep things running. But what he said is he's looking at this as saying, okay, how do we go back to being almost about experiences? This word experiences seems to be doing the rounds a lot more now than it has in recent times. And so, which industries you feel will get most disrupted? Obviously, travel is one, but beyond that?
Travel is the most important one, and generally the events industry, I think, would be affected because events depend on people to head out of their homes and be in crowds. That's definitely one that's affected. I think the overall food and beverage industry would go to online orders and home delivery for a long time. We would still be very fearful of, going to the restaurants that we used to go to earlier. even if they do a lot of social distancing norms even within the restaurant. I mean, as I said earlier, if they had just 50 seats, it would now be about 25 seats with a lot of space in between. But even then, we would be slightly fearful of being in those places, touching the tables and chairs and spoons and cutlery. Everything we would see with the new eyes. And at some point, we may think it's just not worth the risk. Like, let's just order food at home and then heat it up and then eat it. So obviously those players are going to be there. So I think the food and beverage industry is going to have a big hit, and obviously the hotel industry is going to be a big problem. I think these will probably go back to a luxury kind of mode right now because they have to increase the prices for, I mean, for the reduction in interest, obviously from people. So it will actually go back to a state of luxury like it used to be earlier. I mean, like flying used to be a luxury for a few people back then.
Yeah.
It might just go back to that till things turn normal. Hopefully, there is a vaccine around the time. Hopefully.
I was talking to a friend the other day, and he said something very interesting. He said that I'm for the first time in a long time feeling the urge of having to buy my own car because the worry of getting into an Uber and he's been like he's been on an Uber, like he's never felt the need for it now over a decade odd. And he's like, I think I might want to get my own car or my own vehicle because I don't know if it's safe to actually get into an Uber. And so I think this whole point of, and it's a slightly bizarre scenario where also we're trying to have all the experiences we can have within our own homes. And brands are going to jump on, but also the fact that we honestly, I think worried and are going to be worried for a while now to do the simplest of things we used to, like go for a movie, go get into a cab. I mean, those are like the basic things we'd all taken for granted. And there was so much like not even experience the fact that the advertising was all around that, right? You would have, like, I don't even know what the hoardings side of the industry is actually, OOH is going to do.
Yeah. What's the point? No.
Exactly, right. So,
in fact, I mean, my daughter was saying, I mean, like when her school closed, actually, she was saying that all she wants to do in summer is go to Corner House to eat ice cream in Bangalore, and that's been our annual ritual for summer holidays. I mean, thing is that we go there almost once or twice a week and have our favorite ice cream. And we haven't been to Corner House all of this year at all since the beginning of this year. And she is so sad and saying that just Corner House and we are not able to go to Corner House of all the places. We took it for granted earlier, but now we seriously miss it actually.
It's so interesting you say. So Corner House for me when I was in school in Bangalore and even like college during that time was the place you would go to for comfort food, right? So a lot of our comfort food used to be outside food, not necessarily home food, but I think we're all like now comfort food has just become, let's make this at home if we can, right? If we are allowed to. On the other side of things, how have you seen just general working wise, how companies and maybe even agencies have really adapted to it? What have you been noticing on that front?
It is interesting actually because from what I generally have observed, most advertising agencies at least used to be very notorious for making decisions during the sutta break. Actually, all the senior leaders should be smoking in the crowd, and everybody who used to make big decisions during the smoke. But not anymore at all, because even the oldest ad professional has to learn how to work with Zoom or like Google Hangouts, and they are forced to look at it from that point of view. It is actually producing a lot of interesting results for the time being. For instance, you must have seen the Asian Paints ad by Ogilvy India, which uses past footage from homes, etc., to do something. There is a very interesting full-fledged TVC produced by Ogilvy in UK for a brand called Voxy, by Vodafone actually in UK. They actually produced an entire TVC with full-fledged professionals from the agency in their own homes, an actor or two from their own home. The most interesting part was that it was actually a broadcast quality TVC shot with Samsung phones, obviously. The most interesting part was they actually selected actors and made the actors do the backgrounds and props in their own home. Which is actually quite fascinating because so for instance, a professional photographer and a lighting expert spoke to the actors to actually change things around in their home so that they get the best broadcast quality output. So the actors had to do the heavy lifting in their own homes for the background, props, lighting and everything. while everything else happened through a phone, and then the discussion happened, and they produced a broadcast quality ad which went on TV in the UK. So that was actually very, very interesting, but obviously it's not going to last because the backgrounds are pretty homebound basically, and we are used to looking at backgrounds which are vibrant outside and very interesting, vast, big scale. So obviously there would there would be a tiredness in the way we actually see home-produced, homebound ads and communications and photos very soon. As of now, it has not set in. We are just still, basking in the wonder of, oh, everything was shot at home. That's so nice. But it will change at some point, I'm sure.
I think for me, primarily because of how we've looked at it from a production standpoint at Glitch, right? Because that was primarily the part which I oversee. And for me, I've seen how the team kind of adapted to it. It was interesting to see that quickly realized that many things that you'd actually need to go shoot, we could actually do on the computer. Like things could have actually been done through animation years ago, but we always continued to shoot it. So that was on initially quick learning. But also what was interesting was the fact that remote direction is a skill that I think a lot of our guys adapted to very quickly. Like, for instance, we've done, I think, close to 4 to 5 shoots where a director from our end, directed talent who were in their own homes remotely did that. I think the first shoot took a while. But I think by the second or third one, these guys were like doing it like it's a regular thing, right? So getting actors to emote and checking those shots by not even sitting there. It makes me also think the fact that one of the things we always had in any creative profession was the fact that everybody needs to be together to be able to do the best creative. I kind of feel this might really open up the fact that maybe the best talent for X, Y, and Z doesn't necessarily have to be in the same city, forget the same office. And you could finally work with an ideal team. Maybe you can work with a scenario where someone says, okay, I want to be more creative. Maybe I can actually be that. I can be a good designer and be sitting in Goa or anywhere else while working for an agency that's in Delhi or in Bangalore. I think that's really something which is opening up as a thought. Obviously there are many things to figure out along the way, but I think that is a definite thought, at least in my mind, which has been coming up over the last couple of weeks.
Very true. In fact, I noticed one more instance of this remote working coming together in a field that you never thought there would possibly be remote working. Vogue Italy had a photo shoot with a supermodel like her name is Bella Hadid. Mm-hmm. So she was in her home, and a set of professionals who work on the camera and lighting and etc. were in their respective homes. It seems one of them ordered a ring light and actually got it delivered to Bella's house. Mm-hmm. So she actually did her own makeup and she did her own props and lighting based on instructions on FaceTime. And the entire shoot happened on FaceTime. FaceTime was the shoot enabler. And it actually went on print in Vogue, the whole thing. So, which is actually quite fascinating because you would think a fashion photo shoot with a supermodel usually involves so many people together in a room, in a prop, in a set. But nothing like that happened. And the model was all alone in her home. She did her own makeup quite easily. And it went to print also, which was completely fascinating. So, it is interesting, obviously. So, hopefully, when things open up a bit, maybe not the entire crew needs to be in one place. Maybe a few people can be in an outdoor location while the rest can still connect over video and still probably pull it off. In fact, that could even go into the IT companies kind of thing. For instance, if an IT company is based in one location, usually it says that it wants to hire people within the same city for just operational sake that people can come to office at 9 o'clock. Now, if it actually thinks differently and said we are open to hiring people from anywhere in the world as long as you just log in at the time and log off at the time, the whole thing changes dramatically in terms of the kind of people that they can potentially hire.
What's also, I think, interesting is the fact that there might actually be people with unique, like the kind of people who have adapted to it quicker. And this is, I don't think it's an age thing. I think it's a mindset thing. I've seen many people who are, let's say, directors of photography or even like film directors who are little like, I don't know what I can do right now from home, and really putting that question out there. But I've also seen like what you mentioned about FaceTime photography, right? I've seen a couple of these guys who put up, let's say, have put up music videos or even like photo shoots and stuff, which they're doing for their own Instagram accounts, doing the same philosophy, and they're continuing to figure a way to create, as long as they have digital first in their mindset. And I think that goes for all industries. I think there are very few industries, like even events, which you mentioned earlier, right? I mean, although the problem there would be how much would a brand spend on a digital event versus a physical event, and that obviously puts the numbers down much lower. But I think they were actually adapted by, I mean, the number of online concerts happening, the number of webinars. Like, I think I have been on more panel discussions and online discussions over the last couple of weeks than I have over the last couple of quarters. And it just feels so much more convenient. You literally at home, so it's convenient.
Yeah, it is convenient. So obviously the fact is that even in an event scenario, you need professionals to orchestrate the various elements of an event. And if it happens to be an online event, you still need to orchestrate a lot of details, even in an online event with multiple people. So I don't think people's work and professional jobs are going to be at stake. It's just that they need to adapt faster to the new normal so that they become productive in the new normal also.
One more aspect which I thought is actually one of the widest things I've seen is that everyone's kind of started off with a question, I think the first week, saying, okay, what can we create now? Because, I mean, everybody's, let's say, communication plans have went for a toss, because what they were planning to do, let's say, okay, IPL's coming up, or the summer campaigns are going on, etc. I mean, there were tons of things people were planning, which all kind of went for a toss. As I've seen it, I mean, some have done it really well. Some have not understood where the line is drawn, and some have said literally, okay, I'm going to hit stop because I don't know if I should do anything right now. Would that be a fair assessment?
It would be, actually, because I actually see it as 3 stages of communication. The first stage in the week 1 of the lockdown, where people were still not fully believing the new normal actually, was probably the first stage where you as a brand or a brand communication team needs to communicate to the most important stakeholders, which need not be your customers actually. It could be your vendors, partners, employees, the board, etc. All those kind of groups basically. And it needs to be in a communication mode which is more direct and not an asynchronous communication mode like a Twitter or a Facebook. So you need to send them emails, you need to send them, call them probably, or actually get those people into a conference call to announce how things are changing with your organization. So that was actually stage 1. Stage 2 is to actually start speaking to your broader customers, trying to just tell them that things are changed or things are different or things are paused, whatever it is. For instance, I was in touch with a small e-commerce firm that is into a vertical line of products. And that CEO was actually pretty paranoid on week 1, saying I would need to shut my business if I'm not able to ship my products that people have already ordered for, because they are stuck here and they would want their money back, and then I would bleed cash and I don't know what I'm going to do. By week 1 end, he was able to communicate to all parties involved from an operational point of view, that is the vendors, partners, bankers, etc., saying, I don't want to shut. I want to look at a way to keep on running till we are able to go to some kind of normal so that we can start business again. He still hasn't figured out how to do it because the lockdown has affected the non-essentials, and he is actually part of the non-essentials vertical. He's not able to do that. But by week 2, he had sent out very interestingly drafted emails to all customers and all potential buyers and etc., saying that please help us tide over this and we will actually come back stronger. So that was week 2, literally trying to tell people, saying here is a way out, here is what we are thinking, here is all the plans that we have in terms of advertising, branding, communication. Week 3, or actually stage 3, is actually quite an interesting stage where you actually try to do more of what you did in stage 2. So you actually make it into a series so that people continue to actually try to engage with you on the new normal of content that you're sharing. For instance, you must already seen brands like Myntra, Nykaa, and everywhere. They are actually not talking about the products that they are trying to sell anymore, but they are trying to help their customers adapt to the new normal, saying, how do you work better in a home? How do you work in a noisy room inside a home? How do you do exercises in a home where there is no place or no props and etc. for all this stuff? How do you eat properly during a lockdown. So all those kind of content are coming from very unlikely brands that you don't expect that to come at all. So that is actually stage 3, and most brands are actually in stage 3 right now, I think, because we have gone past stage 1 and 2, I guess.
When you actually broke in on the stage, I think that the other way to categorize this is the fact that there were brands, or there are brands who actually were, let's say, part of essentials, or had stuff to do around sanitation, hand sanitizers, etc., who obviously had a very strong message to give out, right? Like they were really people who were supposed to, or other companies who were supposed to really push out what everybody had to follow, what everybody had to do. Yet there were a set of brands who were not necessarily part of that. I mean, a case in point is someone like a Diageo, who obviously is an alcohol manufacturer, went out and said, 1 second, I need to, I can maybe manufacture hand sanitizers, and went ahead and did that. Cannot move themselves from the non-essential category to essentially, not from a marketing sense, but more from okay, this is what we need as brands. Yeah. And the other side, like you mentioned, was brands like Myntra, etc. I wouldn't call it entertainment, but I said keeping people engaged consistently.
Yeah.
And do that.
But
sorry.
Correct. But the thing is that I wouldn't categorize brands as being essential, non-essential even this time, because that would actually be a failure of imagination. For instance, you look at Coca-Cola, the brand that is probably a want and not a need, at least in India, but in the US, I understand it's a need for them because they drink Coca-Cola instead of water. But the thing is that even a Coca-Cola which sells fizzy water, which is completely pointless and extra sweet and unhealthy, they actually turned their Twitter feeds, all feeds on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, etc., as a support mechanism for those handles that are, that don't have the same kind of might in terms of reach as a Coca-Cola. So they actually took into all those handles like a Red Cross or a Blue Cross and all those things who had actually asked for help and support online. They just become a platform with their 2 million and 5 million followers for Coca-Cola. They just amplified those contents. So they had no product level changes saying, let's start making hand sanitizers, but they used their reach in a very interesting way. There is another example of a brand called Steak-umm. So they actually make a brand of thin sliced frozen steaks in the US. And they have a fairly interesting in terms of outlook, in terms of attitude on their social properties, both on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. So they had a very interesting content that thought this was going from March end itself actually. They went on a huge Twitter thread rant on how to stay away from misinformation from mainstream media and social media. Now, the interesting thing is that, they are just a frozen steak brand. What do they have to do with misinformation at all? But they actually took that, on their own, and they actually went on a rant for week after week after week and made a lot of news. And people are saying, I'm actually seeing something sensible from a steak brand on Twitter. How is this even possible? But the point was that they were, able to leverage their creativity and imagination to even pitch, themselves, which is just a brand of frozen steak, and not saying I don't have anything to say, so can just shut up. But they didn't do that at all. They just thought differently to that, and it works for them apparently.
Are you seeing brands thinking that way in India as well? If you look at the Indian market per se, have you seen any examples?
Most definitely. The most interesting example is probably Amul. Amul could probably talk about milk, which is a very essential product that's going on, but it can't talk about ice cream, which has been hit. I think 90% of sales of Amul ice cream has been hit, which is what I read in Economic Times today. But they actually took it head on, saying, can we still advertise? Yes, they can advertise. But what do we advertise with? Nostalgia. They had so much nostalgic advertising. And there is also a good context for why they brought the nostalgic old ads for Amul. It is the fact that since a Ramayan or all those old serials are again on DD, they actually did the same thing with their own ad archive. And there are so many brands with rich ad archives in India, but only an Amul are saying, let's not play the new ads, let's play our old ads which played during the first airing of Ramayan or a Mahabharata. Let's play that all over again. And it went into a complete tangent. So many brands actually started digging up their old archives and putting it up online. So that is phenomenal creativity in my opinion.
I think what has also been an interesting thing which I've been noticing is the fact that a lot of brands have really taken their content strategy head on, right? They realize that they can actually provide so much value by just being content centered. So I mean, someone like what CureFit has done by putting out a lot of their fitness stuff out there and really pushing that agenda, or like something as simple as just like recipe videos and brands of. I mean, it's been an interesting time for them to do this, and I think maybe, I mean, this is one thought which I've had, which I don't know how far it will go, is that maybe post all of this, everyone's going to turn around and say, 1 second, maybe we actually built a lot more engagement by actually becoming almost like publishers.
Yeah, actually, yes. I mean, most brands are thinking like publishers, and I think Cult is a good example. Now, just think about Cult post the lockdown. Would people be comfortable going to a Cult gym anymore at all? Because a gym is a place where people sweat, and you really can't be around a lot of people who are sweating at the same time inside a closed room, even with AC. You would probably shit scared to go to a place like that again. So maybe it is a new line of business for them to continue offering good value courses over video that people can do in their own home. Probably try to match it with some kind of hardware sale also. Probably, probably a treadmill or an exercise cycle which is branded by Cult. Send it home and then do a video plus hardware kind of combination. And towards that, if they're trying to build audience and engagement and interest during this period, hopefully that should stick for the post or the midterm scenario also.
If by looking at all of these, if you had to turn around and say, okay, these are what I would make as almost predictions, if you dare to call it predictions, for almost like trends we can see over the next, let's say, 2-3 years, what would those be?
The first trend is obviously the midterm trend, which will be a phase of increased fear and lack of trust of public spaces and being close to public. That is going to be there. So that will actually be taken into account for a lot of product level changes or a business model level change or a marketing and advertising level change, which is eventual, obviously. That's number one. Number two, I would probably think that when people start coming out a bit, because there is a medicine or there is a flattening of the curve, everything is evident, etc., there is going to be a phenomenal getting back to normal campaign across the globe. It's not just in India, across the globe. There will be a lot of framing of that getting back to normal as helping those affected during the economic downturn of the pandemic, and not saying please consume more. Instead of saying consume more, they will say help the organizations that were affected during that period. So there is a lot of opportunity from a creativity point of view as to how to put forward that message of consume more with empathy, and not from a please be an active consumer, but please help all these restaurants, all these establishments gain their foothold all over again. So that is a phenomenal opportunity from a communication point of view. How do you tell the same thing? Because earlier we were actually seen as being, asking people to consume more as being just, a very decadent, kind of activity. But now it won't be seen something like that anymore at all, because even the act of asking somebody to come back to a favorite restaurant would be actually reframed as saying, please help this restaurant get back to its feet. There are so many employees that need to get their jobs back and their survival back. So please come and eat with us. So the whole thing would be changed from that perspective. I'm sure everybody is going to do that. All places, all establishments that are affected. For instance, I could think of a mall or a cinema theater. Would we even be comfortable going to a cinema theater anymore at all? And also having been so used to an OTT platform during this thing, I'm not sure whether I would be interested to go to a cinema theater at all. But there is a great opportunity for us to turn the whole thing around, saying, don't come because you are, you are feeling scared, but come to actually support cinema theaters so that so many people can get their jobs back and etc. So that's the twist that can happen, which needs to be done with a lot of empathy and thought, I think, and that's a good opportunity for creators.
That's actually something which China tried, right? I think China, when they opened up the Wuhan province, actually turned around and said that people are scared to kind of come out. They did that. Then they said huge discounts, obviously, to make footfalls. I think they made their politicians go and have dinner in restaurants, put up photographs of those things and stuff like that. And I think it's a slow trickle. And yesterday, actually, I was reading about how in Seoul, because South Korea, obviously they've had a slight cases coming back, but people are out there in open air cafes, everything, stuff like that. But I think anybody who looks at masks as a branding opportunity, I think that's really the future. I think we're going to be wearing masks for a long time to come. for many years. I think that's really mask-based advertising. God forbid, might be the out of home advertising of the future.
Very true, but look very corny actually.
It will, yeah. Before we wind up, I know that people are at home, and a lot of the listeners actually keep asking for recommendations of stuff they should actually read. What can they do to kind of, because I mean, I honestly feel bad for anyone who was supposed to go for internship right now or was waiting to getting into interviews for job offers right now. But a lot of them want to spend time to kind of update, just their knowledge, etc., or anything in that sense. Do you have any recommendations for stuff they should read?
Nothing very, very specific. I mean, like a few things that have always helped me. I mean, not just during the pandemic, even apart from that. I probably read about 7 to 10 newspapers every day from cover to cover, quite literally. And it has actually helped me a lot. I mean, like not just from the point of view of just being abreast of what's happening in the India and the world outside, etc., but from the point of being able to make connections of something that I read something like 10 days ago to something that I see today, and those connections have actually kept me really interested in the point of view that I'm able to get new insights because of that reading. So that is something that I highly recommend. Read as many newspapers as possible, because a lot of good people have put a lot of effort to get the news according to you. And it's not just branding related news. There are so many unrelated news that you can connect. You just read it from end to end. And it takes, I mean, like easily about 30 to 45 minutes for me every single day. I read across the newspaper all through basically. So that's one thing that helps. Plus, the second one that I would always recommend is there are a lot of email newsletters that I've actually subscribed to, which have actually been very, very useful from the same point of view. I mean, like trying to read what's happening across the world and India and try to connect the dots from here and there. So there are quite a few email newsletters that I can actually recommend. There is one called Fortune Data Sheet that comes every day evening in India time. That's one. There is one from Axios that is actually quite useful. There is one from Bloomberg, which is actually quite useful. So these email newsletters come every single day. And a whole team actually puts in a lot of effort, try to collate information from various places, their own insights, etc. Those actually keep you really up to date as to what's happening and put forward by the best teams in the world. So these two things I would highly recommend are very, very good.
And why do you think, in spite of everything that's going on in the world, why will advertising not die?
Advertising won't die because people still need to be convinced for a lot of stuff. You can't just put news in front and PR in front and people to be convinced. You still need to convince a lot of people about a lot of things. I mean, like just see the one sector that is doing really well even during the pandemic. It's probably the ed tech segment. There are so many education technology brands in India that have just given up their entire content free for this summer. I mean, like during March, April, May, and kids are having a great time with Amar Chitrakala Tinkle because everything is free on their iPads right now. But even they are actually advertising quite a lot because they need to be in front of people to let people know that something is there basically. But at some point, they would need to convert all those people who have just consumed the free content, try to say that, hey, there is great value, please start paying us from June month onwards. You still need advertising to convince those people in spite of the fact that they have sampled it. So as long as you need to convince people, advertising is going to stay.
Super. Thank you so much, Karthik, for doing this. And I also suggest that if anyone wants to stay updated on the scene, they should follow Karthik on LinkedIn. Always have enough insights to get every day, regularly actually. And also your weekly roundups are best. In case you miss one or two of those, you also put up weekly roundups very nicely. So there is a way to kind of catch up with stuff. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for this.
Yeah, and that's it for this episode of Advertising is Dead.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
रिश्ते में तो हम तुम्हारे पॉडकास्ट लगते हैं. नाम है फुटबॉल शुटबॉल. Presenting Football Should Ball, a show about three friends discussing our favorite game over a beer. Sometimes three, maybe even five. Hi, I'm Shiva, and with me are my two sidekicks, Gaurav Sapre and Karthik Iyer.
Sidekick? You mean like Batman's Robin or Van Persie Robin?
No, I mean like Alexis Sanchez, but with a little more skill than just playing the piano.
Ha! Just shows how the best players at Arsenal are mere bench warmers at United.
Oh, thank you, Iyer. But you're a Fulham supporter, so whenever you say anything to support me, I question my beliefs.
Just like how Griezmann would say, एक बार मैंने जो decision ले लिया, तो मैं अपने आप की भी नहीं सुनता.
Banter aside, we will talk match reports, transfer rumors, top controversies, fantasy football picks, and so much more. So grab a beer and tune in to Football Should Ball every Wednesday on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.